There's so much to talk about in this week's gospel, but I'm just going to concentrate on one little geeky language detail, which actually shows us how much God loves us if we look into it a bit more deeply. So you've got this scene where Jairus, the Roman official, has asked Jesus for his help because his daughter is really sick and everybody around believes that she's already dead. But then Jesus goes and heals her and she sits up and everyone's astonished. Now, the words that Jesus uses in the process of healing, sometimes he just uses words rather than touch or anything like that, or any physical healing. This time he uses the words, "Little girl, I tell you to get up." But for some reason in the Gospel of Mark, the original Aramaic is preserved. Even in the Greek, it's just transliterated from the Aramaic, and it is, we're probably all familiar with it. It's Talitha cum, little girl, get up. That's basically what that phrase means, Talitha cum. But why do I mention it? Well, first of all, it's important that it's kept in Aramaic because all the phrases that are preserved in Aramaic are probably the exact words that Jesus used. So that's an amazing thought to begin with, that Jesus more than likely said Talitha cum. There's a reason that it's kept in Aramaic. I think there are about 7 times when the Aramaic, the language that Jesus would have spoken, is kept in the Gospels. So that's amazing to think that those are the actual words of Jesus. But secondly, I like talking about this because it's not good Aramaic. It's it's the equivalent of, we have the Queen's English, where the real way of saying English, the correct way of saying things, or we've got the proper grammar. But we know that there are loads of dialects and different accents and ways of saying things around our country. It's the same language, but there are different ways. And even though some of them may be incorrect through common usage, and because it's a local dialect, they are actually accepted as correct forms now. And Talitha cum is actually one of those. It's a local dialect, because what Jesus should have said if he was using the supposed Queen's Aramaic, the received Aramaic, the proper grammatical form, it should have been Talitha cumi. So when you're speaking to a female, it's different in Aramaic than if you're speaking to a man. So the ending should have been cumi. And it's funny because I've looked at some translations in English and some of them have actually corrected it. And they've put, if you look at the Revised Standard Version, for example, if you're into that type of thing, it says Talitha cumi, it's corrected it, but it's there, it's Talitha cum. So Jesus has actually used an apparent incorrect way of speaking, and it's a local dialect. It's the Galilean dialect, it's the northern dialect. So that's another important thing to remember, that Jesus was a northerner and he spoke the northern dialect. He gives himself away. We know that Peter gives himself away when he denies Jesus, when Jesus is on trial, and they can tell that Peter's one of Jesus' disciples because he's got a Galilean accent. So Jesus is speaking a Galilean dialect of Aramaic. Now, how does that show us that God loves us? Well, we know the central message of our faith, the central message that we especially celebrate at Christmas, is that God became one of us. He emptied himself and made himself fragile and vulnerable and bound himself into human form, and by the rules of our universe, the universe that he created, but he bound himself so much that he became so vulnerable that he could be killed and he could suffer. And that's the way that that's what we celebrate, that God loves us so much that he emptied himself. He just, almost gave up his divinity, his power as God, in order to be with us and to save us. And that's mind-blowing. And this is actually one of the ways that shows us that, because we know that Jesus grew up in Nazareth, in Galilee. And therefore he's picked up that accent, he's picked up that local dialect, and he's bound himself in human form so much that he speaks in a northern accent and a northern dialect. He doesn't bother, he doesn't sound posh, he doesn't, and so on and so forth. So this slightly geeky, maybe dry linguistic thing that I'm very interested in is actually an amazing thing that shows us how much God loves us. He loves us so much that he's emptied himself. He's become vulnerable. He became a little baby in the womb, and he grows up risking everything in life. And even right when he's an adult, when he's had all that learning, he still speaks in a northern dialect, a northern accent. So if you don't remember anything else from this little thought, you remember that Jesus is a northerner. But when Jesus says Talitha cum, an incorrect form of Aramaic, how much God loves us.